Friends, I am here with Amanda Jacobson. She is an all-around great, funny, humorous, creative person, but she's also one of the creators and hosts of the podcast, the very popular podcast, Wine and Crime, with her friends Kenyon Lang and Lucy Fitzgerald. Yeah? All right. And one of the things, Amanda, that you're doing to ride out this crisis is giving us daily reads from the Animorphs series.
Who knew that this is what the world needed right now? I didn't know.
Yeah, I have to tell you, it's a particular nerdiverse that I was not familiar with.
Yeah.
So, but I've been reading up on it, and it sounds cool.
Oh.
And you can I hear the books are great. You can also watch the television show on many platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and also, Amanda, I also, in honor of having you on, I poured some wine.
Yes!
In my vintage Uhura glass.
I love.
And I can nerd out about her and Star Trek for a long time, too. So if you ever want to get down with that.
Oh, absolutely. What wine are you drinking?
I'm drinking the La Ville Fermé Rosé. It comes in a box, and it is delicious.
I'm all about it. I'm actually wineless right now. I've had like 3 cups of coffee this morning, so my palate is completely blasted out at this point. And my body is just like begging for water. So I'll pick the wine game up in, let's call it an hour.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to probably ask you a few more questions after we're done, but I'm interested in this reading we're going to have.
Okay. Yeah. So like you said, every day on my Instagram live feed, which if anyone listening would like to follow is at Amander007. I have been starting at the first Animorphs book called The Invasion and reading one chapter every day and then featuring a different charity that I'm shouting out, putting in my bio and trying to get folks to donate. I've been donating every day as well. And each day's charity is to support a different COVID relief effort. So today's reading that I did at noon was actually to promote the Women's Expo and the donations to Springboard for the Arts, which we did feature once before last week. So I'm glad to be circling back on it because we have so many artists, friends, and family and independent contractors, small business owners who require gathering spaces in order to work. And all of those things have come abruptly to a halt. So it's been a really, really fun way to just bring people a little break in their day, but also raise money for some great causes.
That's great. And what are some of the causes you've been featuring?
So we've supported Meals on Wheels. We've supported the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Unfortunately, for a lot of folks, sheltering in place is not necessarily the safest situation. So they're still providing resources to get folks out of those dangerous situations, even during this crisis. Again, we've supported the Springboard for the Arts effort to bring some financial relief to people out of work. We've supported small efforts to bring relief to restaurant workers who are out of work. We've supported the Animal Humane Society because a lot of their doors have to be closed to adoptions, but they still are taking in animals and need to care for the animals that they have. So their resources are limited without, the massive adoption capacity to keep them supported. So moving forward, there are going to be a lot of fun new ones.
Oh, hi, Jeremy. This is Diana Pierce. Just letting you know that
and yeah, it's going to be awesome.
I love
Technology.
I love it. Okay, so now from here, are you doing the reading for us now, or are you going to your Instagram?
Oh, no, I can do a reading for you now, but we're switching it up a little bit. One of the curators of this event is actually a good friend of mine, Sarah Salisbury. What's up? We have a shared love of Animorphs, but also Harry Potter. And Sarah found a Harry Potter Animorphs fan fiction crossover and sent it to me. I'm going to read the first chapter of that today, and then probably, I have not actually read it yet because I like to cold read these on these streams. So assuming we like it, I'm probably going to incorporate this moving forward into my daily readings.
Awesome.
So I can get started whenever you're ready for me.
Do it.
Okay, so just to bring people up to speed, we're not very far into the first Animorphs book. They've been given the power to morph, and they've been testing out their morph powers. We've met some aliens, but this chapter might contain some spoilers for me, which I don't really care about, but whatever.
Right.
Because this takes place after the end of the first book of Animorphs with Harry Potter characters. So this is what the artist, AX, that they're going by, the writer, has written. Hooray, it's a Harry Potter Animorphs crossover. Funness. Yeah, it takes place during Harry's 5th year and right after the first Animorphs book. So here we go. The first chapter is The American Animagi. Harry Potter, a 15-year-old wizard, raises his wand at the pincushion he was supposed to be transfiguring into a porcupine. Hermione, one of his best friends, who had already changed her pincushion into a porcupine and back, because she is a boss witch, watched him and a tall, gangly boy with a shock of red hair to complete their assignments. Damn it! I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but it's written here. The red-headed boy yelled. His pincushion had finally changed, but his hand had been in the way, and there were sharp needles sticking into his hand. Ron, Hermione exclaimed, looking at the boy. Watch your mouth. Thank you, Hermione. Harry rolled his eyes, sick of his two best friends fighting. He knew they were completely and totally in love with each other, but were too dense to realize it, obviously. Okay, I'm going to try again, Harry announced before Hermione and Ron's argument could progress any further. I'm not a good cold reader. This is what we're learning about me this week. A look of concentration washed over his face, and he flicked his wrist. A line of sparks shot out of his wand, and suddenly, the pincushion was not on the table anymore. In its place was a large spaceship. All the sounds in the room stopped, and everybody stared at the spaceship in the center of the room, their eyes slowly moving to Harry, who was looking dumbstruck at the hunk of metal in front of him. Mr. Potter, Harry's teacher, Professor McGonagall exclaimed. What is that? Ron, who was rubbing his wounded hand, dropped his mouth open, amazed. Harry, you never told me you could do that. Harry said nothing, his eyes transfixed on the ship. Professor McGonagall only said to transfigure it into a porcupine, Harry, Hermione scolded. Harry, how do you explain yourself? Professor McGonagall demanded, now angry with him for his silence. I don't know, Harry stuttered. Just then, there was a magnificent clanking sound, and a door on the side of the ship started creaking open. The children gasped, and Professor McGonagall gaped for a second before hurrying out to the door to find the headmaster of the school, Albus Dumbledore. The door to the classroom slammed open, and little Professor Flitwick stormed in, saying, What's all this noise? You're disturbing my fourth-year student. He stopped as soon as he saw the spaceship opening and fell into a dead faint. However, none of the students took note of the tiny teacher on the floor. They were too busy looking at the amazing sight in front of them. A screeching, angry bird shot out of the ship and started flying around the room. It finally landed on the table near Harry, Hermione, and Ron. It glared at them, its feathers puffed out and its eyes angry. Hedwig? Harry asked stupidly. The bird looked at him and fluffed his feathers even more. Also coming out, well, I mean, classic Harry, he's always asking stupid questions. That's just normal. Also coming out of the ship, following the bird, were two guys that looked to be about 16. One was slightly shorter than average, with dark brown hair, brown eyes, and a dark complexion. The other was tall, strongly built, and had paler brown hair and haunted brown eyes. They were both looking around in confusion. Wondering where their teacher was, some of the fourth-year students from next door wandered into the room. Among them was Ginny, Ron's younger sister, who also had hair the color of flame. Ron, what's that? She asked, her voice faint and disbelieving. Menderash, the shorter boy asked, calling inside the spaceship. What happened? Where are we? Did we die? I didn't feel any impact. We're not dead, the taller boy answered. Rachel and Tom aren't here. The shorter boy looked at the other one sadly and then stepped back. Dude, Jake, you're young. I wish, Harry Potter heard the one called Jake mutter. Then more loudly, Jake said, Well, I would hope so. I'm only 19. Ron started snorting, trying to hide his giggles. The boys could not have been older than 17. No, man, I mean, you look young, like you did during the war. Huh. Jake looked down and yelped. He took a closer look at the other boy, too. Marco, for once you're right. What the heck is happening? He exclaimed. And if you've been watching my feed, you know I hate Marco. He's an idiot, and he always says the dumbest stuff. So I really appreciate Jake saying, for once you're right, because Marco is the worst. They're Americans, Hermione whispered to Harry, Ron, and Ginny. Aren't their accents funny? Said me, who can't do a British accent, so I'm not even trying. What are we? What happened to me? Why is my body not as old anymore? The room became silent. There had been a voice, but no one had actually heard it. It was almost like it just sounded inside their heads. Unconsciously, Ginny crept backwards, nearer to Harry. Ron put a hand on Hermione's shoulder. What was that, Neville Longbottom, another student in the Disrupted Transfigurations class, asked, his voice quivering. Marco shook his head. Would you look at that, Tobias? They don't know who we are. I mean, you're the only talking red-tailed hawk around, right? What far corner of the earth are we on? Two more people walked out of the ship, leaning on each other for support. They both looked to be in their mid-20s. One was a surprisingly beautiful woman, the other a very fit man. Why aren't we dead? The woman asked, her French accent very noticeable. I wonder if this passes the Bechdel test. I never remember exactly what the guidelines are. Do you remember that?
I can't. Yes, I'll weigh in at the
okay.
end.
We're close. Why, she must have gone to Beauxbatons, Ron exclaimed. I wonder if she knows Fleur. Hermione turned around and slapped him. Blimey, Hermione, what was that for? I mean, you kind of earned that one, Ron. Marco started giggling. Blimey? All right, I think that answers my question. We're in England, and England is not the middle of nowhere. Therefore, they must know about us. Yes, we've been gone for 6 months, but still, we're in the history books, and I have my own television show. Marco stopped, beaming at his own words. So why don't they know who we are? What's television? Ron questioned.
Oh,
gee, Marco. Maybe it's because some people actually have lives that don't revolve around worshiping world heroes and catching the latest episode of your show. There's that voice again, Harry muttered, trying to make sense of it. Ron scratched his head. Hey you, Marco said, looking at Harry. Where exactly are we, and why don't you guys know who we are? They're bloody insane, Ron whispered under his breath, earning a glare from Hermione. They belong in St. Mungo's. Harry is the only one here that's in any history books. Harry stared at him, puzzled. Finally, he said, You're at Hogwarts School of Wizardry. I've never heard of you before in my life. See, they don't care, Marco. The voice that was not a voice said again, but a bit sarcastic, triumph, touching the grief in it. The older woman spoke again. This makes no sense. Damn right, the man said, speaking for the first time. What do you mean, School of Wizardry? Jake asked, his face tired. They're muggles, Ginny whispered. They don't know about us. Then two things happened at once. Professor Dumbledore, headmaster of the school, strode through the door, Professor McGonagall following quickly behind him. At the same time, something that was definitely not human stepped off the ship. Ron, still clueless, asked, Since when were there such things as blue centaurs? It's obviously not a centaur, Hermione explained, her voice becoming slightly bossy. For one, there's no such thing as a blue centaur. Also, centaurs have the tails of horses, not scorpions, and centaurs only have one set of eyes, so this is obviously an Andalite. I know this. What she said was true. The thing that had just stepped off the ship had the same basic shape as a centaur, but had a long tail with a wicked blade on the end, blue fur covering its entire body, no mouth, too many fingers, and a pair of eyes on top of its head on swiveling stalks. Jake, I seem to have recovered my Andalite body, a new voice said. Once again, the Hogwarts students could not hear it as they normally would, but instead heard it inside their heads. The humans that had come off the ship did not seem to care in the slightest. However, they seemed just as amazed by a not centaur as the students were. Menderash, Jake asked. Yes, it's me. I do not know what happened. The ship is not working. We were not going at such a velocity that we could have entered Z-space and exited again so quickly. There was no way that we could arrive here on Earth so quickly. According to physics, we could not have without coming here to find that this planet had aged years. We also could not have gone this quickly without dying. Also, we would have hit the blade ship, the curvature of space. Harry felt his eyes glazing over. He looked around, and everybody else, including the two called Jake and Marco, seemed to be falling asleep as well. Only Hermione gazed raptly at the blue thing, nodding in understanding. Well, of course your ship isn't working, she said. Electricity doesn't work on Hogwarts grounds. Who are you and how did you get here? Dumbledore finally broke the silence and the voiceless monologue. Harry decided that the voiceless monologue was coming from the centaur thing. That's what we're trying to figure out, Jake said, stepping forward. Harry could not help but notice how sad he looked. My name is Jake Berenson, he stopped, obviously waiting for some sort of reaction. No one said anything. Dumbledore just looked at him thoughtfully. Jake Berenson, you know, the leader of the Animorphs, Marco suggested brightly. And I'm Marco, by the way, the smart, funny, cute Animorph, he said, at first grinning at Parvati and Lavender, who were two of Harry's classmates, but trailing off when there was no reaction. Okay, I'm checking to see how much more we have. Oh, we're getting really close.
15 minutes left.
Okay, great. We're getting close here. Animorph is not a word, Hermione said. I agree with her on that one, Ron said, nodding earnestly. Marco looked around incredulously. Jake's sad face seemed to have lifted, and now he just looked confused. Finally, he said, Tobias, would you like to show them what an Animorph is? They don't look dangerous. Fine, the first soundless voice said bitterly. The great bird hopped off Harry's table and fluttered to the ground by Jake, Marco, and the other two humans in the blue thing's feet. Surprisingly, it started to stretch upwards. Its feathers started sticking into its body until it looked like a plucked chicken. Somebody get Madame Pomfrey, Ginny wailed. All the students were making sounds of horror and disgust. Only Professor Dumbledore kept calm. He's almost like an Animagi, Minerva, Dumbledore commented to the horrified Professor McGonagall. His transformations are just slightly more disturbing.
Oh, Amanda, we're at time.
All right, that's a perfect place to
It's
stop.
a cliffhanger.
Perfect place to stop.
Oh my God. This has been such nerdy, weird fun, and I could do this literally all day.
I kind of love the fanfic, so I'm
It's kind of great.
this up.
It does not pass the Bechdel test, which, by the way, has two women with names
Got
having
it.
a conversation about anything other than a man.
Love it.
So it kind
That's
of.
what I thought, but I wasn't 100% sure, and I'm glad you confirmed it.
All right. Amanda Jacobson, she is the host of the very, very fun podcast, Wine and Crime, along with her two friends, Kenyon and Lucy, and they can be found on all of your streaming platforms. Amanda, how do we find you on Insta?
Yeah, go to my Instagram. It's at Amander007, AMANDER007, and I'm going to be reading Animorphs every day for a new charity to help COVID relief.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Geraldine and Diane, I'm turning it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. That was a lot of fun. I love